Well, Naledi, as Aldrin correctly pointed out, Advocate Charles Mnisi, who is representing accused number 3, begins his cross-examination this morning of a state witness, Mthokozisi Thwala, after the completion of cross-examination yesterday by Sipho Ramosepele. Basically, Sipho Ramosepele says the events as described by Thwala are far from the truth. In fact, the version that he gives, according to Ramosepele, is devoid of what could happen in real life. He questioned basically how it was possible for Longwe Thwala, who you'd recall has been described as the then boyfriend of Kelly Khumalo, who is Kelly Khumalo's sister, how it was possible for him to have fled past 2 armed alleged intruders on the day that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. You'd recall that Thwala had told this court that one of the intruders, the first one, had been carrying a gun, and the second one was carrying a sharp object, which he presumed to have been a knife. So Ramosepele basically asking how it was so possible. In fact, he says, this so-called bravado that was demonstrated by Thwala never happened. How could he have left the house without the intruders, for example, the one with the gun, and even the other carrying the knife, not restraining him or stopping him or trying to stop him from trying to flee the house? Because obviously, had that been the case, Thwala then would have rushed off to go and call the police. And this is something that Ramosepele says, any intruder would have wanted to stop from happening. So Ramosepele basically says that the version that Thwala is giving this court, is devoid of the truth. It simply did not happen, and that he contends there were no intruders inside the house on the day that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. But we heard Thwala say that is the version that he is giving to this court. That is what happened on that day. We also heard from Ramosepele, who says that one of the neighbors, a neighbor's son, who deposed the statement, says that he heard some commotion coming from the house of Kelly Khumalo's mother just before the shot had rung out on the day that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. So Thwala basically says that anyone who has deposed of a statement to the contrary to what he has told this court must basically come and give their version of events then here at the High Court if they are called to do so. So also what we heard yesterday, Aldrin and Naledi, is that some of the statements that were deposed by neighbors, we've also heard in the past. This is also during the testimony of Senzo Meyiwa's other long-term friend, Tumelo Madlala, in which, these neighbors say they heard some commotion that was coming from the Meyiwa home before these shots had rung out. We also saw yesterday, Thwala also described how after he had jumped over the gate into one of the neighbors' homes, he found a son and a father at that house, and basically said, there was something happening at the Khumalo home. And after he had jumped back in, when he arrived back inside the Khumalo home, he found Senzo Meyiwa lying on the floor and basically lifted his T-shirt. And that's where he saw the gunshot wound. And at some point, there was a discussion in the home for them to call the police as well as an ambulance. He says at the time, the belief was that Senzo Meyiwa was still alive. And he went on to describe, how Senzo Meyiwa had been lying, where he had been lying inside the house, and how that scuffle had ensued, between after Longwe Thwala had allegedly pushed one of the intruders and managed to flee, and how the others inside the house, had sort of wrestled with the alleged intruders on the day that Senzo Meyiwa was killed. So what we're expecting today is for Advocate Charles Mnisi, representing accused number 3, to continue on the same trajectory, because the defense believes that there were absolutely no intruders on the day that Senzo Meyiwa was killed, and that in fact those inside the house should be the ones to say what happened to Senzo Meyiwa. So we're expecting very much Advocate Charles Mnisi to continue to try and poke holes in the testimony that Thwala had brought before this court.
Chriselda Lewis is speaking to us there. Just quickly before I let you go, Chriselda, now we know that we're going to be streaming those proceedings on YouTube. The country really watching this case very, very closely. What time are we expecting proceedings to get started? Because certainly the public interest here is massive.
Well, Well, that's right, Naledi. Every single day, just to remind our viewers, we're also streaming proceedings at the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial on the SABC YouTube page. So if you're not at home, you're somewhere at work, somewhere at the shops, you'll certainly be able to catch that. We're starting at 10 o'clock or just shortly after. Stay tuned to SABC News. We have that covered.